welcome to From the South. I'm Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news, so stay with us. Close to 7 million people in Malawi will head to the polls this Tuesday, 21st, in a tightly contested race for the presidency. Corruption has been a central theme of the closely fought campaign, with sitting President Peter Mutharika competing against two challengers, his former Vice President Saulos Chilima and opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera. The opposition recently accused the government of using promotions as a political tool to sway the results, but the government rejected these claims. And speaking at the inauguration of a new center to combat terrorism, Syria's President Bashar al-Assad has reflected on the war that ravaged his country, which began in March 2011. The Syrian leader pointed to internal elements which inflamed the conflict.
This was a hard lesson for all of us. It was a hard shock that imposed on everyone that they evaluate all the elements that led to this war. It's true that the war was made outside the country, but its elements were made inside.
And the Indonesian Electoral Commission has announced that the incumbent president, Joko Widodo, has officially won the country's general elections. The current president received 55.5% of the vote, while the challenger, former General Prabowo Subianto, received 44.5%. Private polling companies had already indicated that Widodo had beaten his rival, who alleged widespread cheating during the election.
The valid ballots voted for presidential candidate number 1 Joko Widodo and Maruf Amin is over 85 million, or 55.5% of the total national votes. The valid ballots voted for presidential candidate number 1 Prabowo Subianto and Sandiaga Salahuddin Uno is over 67 million, or 44.5% of the total national votes.
And the Chinese telecommunications company Huawei has said that it will reinforce its own technology after United States ordered Google to suspend the use of Android operating system. The measure taken by United States is designed to impede Huawei by preventing access to Google Store and limiting use of the Android system. Another Chinese technology giant, Lenovo, rejected rumors it cut supplies to Huawei as a consequence of U.S. sanctions. The Chinese Foreign Minister Lu Kang said that Beijing will support national companies to defend their rights.
We formally confirm these facts, and we will pay attention to developments closely. At the same time, China supports Chinese businesses in adopting the legal means to defend their legitimate rights.
And the World Health Organization calls for the governments and opposition of the Democratic Republic of Congo to find a bipartisan solution to the Ebola outbreak as ongoing violence hampers response. The World Health Organization Director General said that ongoing violence, including these repeated attacks on Ebola treatment centers and personnel, are disrupting the WHO operation. They also increase the risk of the epidemic spreading to other countries. The Ebola outbreak has killed over 1,000 people in the country so far.
I have also met personally with His Excellency the President of DRC and opposition leaders to urge a bipartisan approach to ending this outbreak, because Ebola does not take sides. It's the enemy of everybody. Unless we unite to end this outbreak, we run the very risk that it will become more widespread and more expensive and more aggressive.
And in protest against war in Yemen, Italian union workers have refused to load electricity generators onto a Saudi Arabian ship packed with weapons. Unions in Genova had first tried to have the ship banned from docking in Italy, but the Saudi vessel docked on Monday. Even though the generators were registered for civilian use, unions feared they could be instead used in the Yemeni war. The vessel was previously prevented by humanitarian groups from loading further cargo of arms in the French port of Le Havre. And the Venezuelan president, Nicolás Maduro, has proposed that early elections be held for the opposition-led National Assembly. President Maduro made the announcement this Monday, 20th, that marks 1 year since he was re-elected with nearly 68% of the votes, beating two opposition candidates. Since the elections, President has survived assassination attempts, the latest coup attempt, which took place on April 30th, and Chavistas are also celebrating that the country's triumph over the electrical grid sabotage, and also their resilience amid the financial blockade and theft of Venezuelan assets abroad.
Today, I'm making a proposal to the opposition. We're going to hold elections. We're going to legitimize the only institution that hasn't been legitimate for the past 5 years. We're going to have early elections for the National Assembly. We'll see whose side the people are on, who has the votes. We accept the challenge. We're going to have a peaceful, democratic and constitutional solution. You have to respect the sovereign will of the people. Why won't they respond to this proposal?
During his message to the nation, the Venezuelan president also thanked the people for their strength and defending the country's sovereignty, and spoke about the positive results from the talks with the opposition being held in Norway.
We've had a first day of talks mediated by the Norwegian government in the north of Europe, in the Nordic region. I have to say that it's been very positive. I'm a man who believes that words are the way to communicate differences. I'm a man of peace, because what I know is peace, and the struggle for it. Don't mistake me for a fool. Don't think I'm naive. I believe in peace. I believe in dialogue. But I'm preparing the people to defend the homeland, however it may be, wherever it may be, and whenever it may be. We're prepared to defend the homeland.
With this world news, we come to a first break hearing from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. Stay with us. And now we go to Nicaragua, where opposition has withdrew from negotiations with the government shortly before President Ortega issued the release of 100 political prisoners in attempt to maintain dialogue. The Civic Alliance for Justice and Democracy made the decision partly because of the recent death of a Nicaraguan American prisoner, Eddie Montes, who was reportedly shot inside a prison. The government said it was planning to free almost 300 political prisoners by June 18th. They also said the International Committee of the Red Cross is monitoring the process. And Ecuadorian authorities have begun handing over some of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's possessions to the United States. The material includes legal papers, medical records, and electronic devices. Ecuador's Foreign Minister José Valencia authorized the seizure of Assange's belongings earlier this month. Meanwhile, Assange's lawyer says the move was completely unprecedented in the history of asylum, and WikiLeaks editor-in-chief says there was no doubt that Ecuador had tampered with the material it had sent to the United States. And the Special Jurisdiction for Peace in Colombia says former FARC leader Jesus Santrich has not been extradited to the United States due to the lack of evidence. In an official statement, the court says it does not have enough information to establish when Santrich would have committed the alleged drug trafficking crimes he is accused of by the United States. Authorities have appealed this decision. Meanwhile, the FARC political party has rejected the judicial plot against Jesus Santrich. In an official statement, the party also rejected the role of the state in the killings of peace supporters and says it will take urgent actions to guarantee that peace agreements are fulfilled. And on Saturday, the New York Times published an article on how the head of Colombian army ordered his troops to double down on killings, even at the risk of higher civilians' casualties. Colombian Senator Iván Cepeda spoke to Telesur and said this is a continuation of the deadly security policies implemented by former President Álvaro Uribe.
What we have is an attempt to resurface all criminal practices against human rights. The main object here is to design policies and legal instruments to allow members of military forces to murder people in order to fulfill a series of requirements and reach a specific number of murders and prepare a report for their higher officials. We need to completely eradicate these criminal acts from the history of the military forces of Colombia. If it is a part of the doctrine that any measure is vital to obtain results, it is obvious that they are going to present formal results by murdering social leaders and civilians. These policies are not only within the framework of armed operations against criminal organizations, but also promotes other forms of violence, such as the murdering of social leaders.
After the article was published, the Minister of Defense, Guillermo Botero, tried to defend the actions of the army. Let's hear what he said.
Las imprecisiones consignadas.
After the inaccuracies published in an article during the weekend, I will say that the main point to clarify to the public opinion is that according to a decree of the Colombian Constitution of 2011, the defense of the people's rights is to face the aggressors. This is the purpose of the Colombian military forces. The aggressor needs to be under control. People that vulnerate the law must face justice, and we do it based on our Constitution and the Supreme Court of Justice. I repeat what I said many times on August 7, 2018. President Iván Duque asked me to observe the law, the Constitution, and the human rights. And I have repeated this many times to commanders, and they have also reiterated it to their members.
Also, responding to the article, Lawyers Association denounced the selective assassination policies of the armed forces. The José Alvear Restrepo organization said that the same situation led to the murder of thousands of young people in the so-called false positive scandal from 2002 until 2010. They said the order given by the army authorities placed innocent civilians at risk. And a Colombian feminist activist, Mayerlis Angarita, was attacked while inside a car in Barranquilla. She had previously denounced death threats against her for her work with the victims of the armed conflict. Mayerlis Angarita works with a group of hundreds of women after the peace agreement was signed. She was traveling with her children and a nephew on Saturday when an armed man approached the car and shot at her. Police said they were investigating the incident. And the 24th March of Silence has taken place across Uruguay in protest against the unpunished repressive violence of the country's civic-military dictatorship. 43 years after the legislators Selman Michelini and Héctor Gutiérrez Ruiz, as well as activists Rosario Barredo and William Whitelaw, were found dead in Buenos Aires, demonstrators are condemning impunity before the law. The communist leader Benjamin Liberov disappeared on the same day in 1976. The protesters are marching under the slogan, "Tell us where they are We stand against legal impunity today and yesterday. The march is taking place just days after prominent dictatorship figure Joselino Gabazo admitted at the military tribunal that he threw the body of Tupamaro National Liberation Movement member Roberto Gomenzoro into the Rio Negro. And the Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador seeks to turn the commitment of the United States of investing in Central America into a reality and is striking a concrete deal with the Trump administration. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said he wants the United States government to ditch the so-called media initiative that deploys millions of dollars for security programs in Mexico instead of develop programs. U.S. President Donald Trump had made commitments for United States investment in Central America and Mexico to halt migration, but earlier this year he ordered to end U.S. aid in the region.
No queremos el Plan Mérida.
We do not want the Merida Plan. We do not want helicopter gunships. We don't want that type of cooperation. We want cooperation for development, because that is what will help us calm the country, calm Central America, and to have peace with justice and well-being.
And human rights organizations in El Salvador are opposing attempts by lawmakers to pass a national reconciliation law that would allow to pardon war crimes committed during the 12-year-long armed conflict in the country. What consequences would this bring to the country? Let's find out more on the following story.
Relatives of victims of the armed conflict are demanding truth, justice, and reparations from the state in cases of serious human rights violations during the El Salvador Civil War, which left over 75,000 dead and missing. Blanca Salazar condemns the kidnapping of 3 of her brothers in 1989.
We've been to military bases, to police stations, to prisons, but as time passes, we stop hearing anything about them. No one told us anything, so we left it at that. We looked for my brothers for so long, but we stopped because no one longer had hope.
The situation of victims is increasingly complicated because of the intentions of a commission of the Legislative Assembly, which wants to approve a national reconciliation law, considered by many as a new amnesty law for war criminals, something that's already been deemed unconstitutional since 2016.
History has already taught us that impunity is not the way towards a national reconciliation. As such, we make an appeal to the Legislative Assembly, to the elites behind it who are pushing for this agreement, not to make the same mistake that was made in 1993. A new amnesty is not right. It is not in accordance with our national legal system or with what is mandated by the Constitutional Court. Therefore, we are going to continue denouncing the proposed silencing of victims' voices.
UN transitional justice experts urge lawmakers not to pass a bill which would lead to the immediate pardon of war criminals.
I think the victims deserve respect, they deserve dignity, they deserve justice. They deserve to know the whole truth about those who have disappeared and those who were murdered.
A few days before the end of President Salvador Sánchez Serén's term in office, victims demand that the president veto the reconciliation law if it is approved, since those who support it participated in serious human rights violations, which would go unpunished.
And in Panama, authorities continue to expel farmers from the Panamanian region of Baru from their territory, which will be given to the international corporation Del Monte. The communities reject the decision, saying that hundreds of families depend on the land to survive. Let's find out more about this on the following story.
Felicito Pitti has been farming these lands for more than 20 years, but now the Panamanian authorities have destroyed his crops and the plantations of another 100 local farmers in order to give the lands to the company Del Monte.
We are proud to continue to farming this very productive territory, but they have destroyed the land. There are approximately 25 local farmers who have lost everything. The machine from the company came with the complicity of authorities.
The machines keep sweeping the land, which was taken by the farmers after the company Chiquita Brands International abandoned the area in the 1990s, leaving the place in poverty.
You can see what is happening here. You can see the machine damaging the crops. There is empty terrain that the company could take and do whatever it wants with, but it's easier to take over lands that are already clean and farm that to start where there are plants and shrubs.
More than 5,400 hectares were given to the international company, including close to 1,900 largely subsistence farms that are used by around 400 families, which negatively impacts their way of life.
Mr. Valera came with a foreign company to destroy the Panamanians who do not take a single cent from the government to take care of their families. What the government is doing is not right.
There is barely any evidence of the old banana crop. The farmers return from their land, fearing what the companies may leave behind.
There is nothing, only total destruction. This is not right.
The community has to get together and denounce the authorities before a court, including the president, because of the continuous prosecutions leveled against them.
Provincia de Chiriquí.
And indigenous communities in Paraguay have started using technology to protect their land. The tech project includes several people called monitors that take photographs using a cell phone app to automatically create a map to outline the border of the terrain. The community they say they will help them protect the lands that in the past have been occupied by large-scale producers, and the loss of land and natural resources are the main issues for the communities. Experts say it's one of the main reasons 75% of them live on poverty or extreme poverty.
I learned on the mobile phone to take points and lines. This is important for me because we can know how many hectares our territory has, up to where ours is. Thanks to this work, I was able to manage the GPS, and that's why it's very important to me.
And like this, we go to a second break and a very short one here from the south. Continue with us. Sudan, protesters have accused the Sudanese military of procrastinating during transitional talks. There were more demonstrations in Khartoum this Monday. Amid an ongoing sit-in, protesters are threatening to continue the sit-in and spread the protest if talks are not completed soon.
If the military council does not give us all our demands at the next negotiation session at 9 p.m., we will continue our sitting everywhere and take our demands away, because all that is happening now is procrastination.
Meanwhile, the deputy leader of Sudan's military council has assured that all concerns will be heard. He also announced that suspects in connection with shootings that took place this week have been arrested. Unidentified attackers opened fire this Monday at a sit-in by pro-democracy demonstrators, killing one police officer and injuring several police.
We want free and fair elections, and for the Sudanese people to elect whom they want. The perpetrators who killed protesters have been arrested and will be revealed to the media shortly or after a few hours, but will be presented today. They recorded a judicial confession and were taped doing so. If we are liars, the camera does not lie.
And the Palestinian Authority has said that the United States government did not consult them regarding a U.S.-led conference in Bahrain next month designed to encourage investment in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The White House announced the conference on Sunday. They say it is part of Donald Trump's so-called deal of the century. The Palestinian Authority have, however, said any solution that does not address Palestinian people's core demands for an end to Israel's occupation will not work.
Cabinet stresses that it wasn't consulted about the reported workshop, neither about the content nor the outcome and or the timing. It clarifies that the financial crisis that the Palestinian National Authority is living through today is a result of the financial war that is being waged against us in order to win political concessions. We do not submit to blackmail, and we don't trade our political rights for money.
Like this, we come to the end of this brief, but you can find this and much more other stories on our website, TelstarEnglish.net, where of course you can find opinion article or watch our special interviews. Continue with Telesur, connecting the global thousands. And next time, thank you for watching.